Oh, I have hit record. Okay, everyone online, we're going to get started in just a couple of moments here. I have started my recording, so Patty will be monitoring chat, so anything you wish to share will be shared. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on screen sharing. We will get started in just a moment with like some introductions and things like that. We'll go around the room and all that good stuff. So, screen share. All right. All right, I'll pull up the agenda just to have that up in the background here. Okay, there's the agenda. All right. Okay, I think I have everything ready to go. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Cassandra, who is the CERT committee chair, is not here today. So you're stuck with me, I guess, for the moment. I don't know if we elect a new subcommittee or committee co-chair, I may recruit them to come up and sit by me so I'm not so alone. If we could, I'm gonna have the people in the room go around and just say names and library and your position there. Nothing, I won't do anything super elaborate. This may get a little hard to hear for those of you who are online. I apologize for that, but and then we'll come around and introduce everyone online. So, all right, if we just, I'll skip Jennifer because we'll make a big deal out of that in a minute. But then if we start with Erica.
Tina Murphy, Belmont Public Circulation. Everyone, I was sorry I just like to know.
Corey Shannon, Circulation Manager at the Park Library.
Carrie Gibbon, Circulation and Tech Services Manager at the Washington District Library. Roxy Thompson, Morgan Library, Circulation Manager.
And all those Circ Manager at Ottawa. Coordinator for RSA.
Cheryl Farlow, Director of
Richard Young, Director of Brown County Public Library.
Faye Madison, Kelloggy, Abby Clara, Member Services Coordinator at RSA. Stephen Buckman, User Experience Coordinator at RSA. Sarah Nixon, Member Services Coordinator at RSA.
Okay, thank you all. I'm just going to go down the list briefly in, what do you call it, in Zoom. And unfortunately, a whole bunch of you have signed up since I last looked at the registration list, so I may not have library names for everyone, but feel free to chime in and identify yourself with what library you're at if it's not one that I have in front of me. So we have Abby Miles, Ann Turnbull, who's from Kewanee, I believe, Dawn Smith from Illinois Prairie, Elizabeth from Henry, Lori, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, but please correct me, Preeb, or is it Preeby? I'm not sure, from Danvers, Megan Greenhug from Chillicothe, correct me if I'm wrong, Melody Heck from Galva, Rebecca Gopinath from Normal, Sarah Arnold, I'm afraid I don't know what library you're with, Teresa Johnston, Timothy Sheely, and Anita Smith from Henderson County. So thank you all for joining us today. I am going to begin with an introduction of a new RSA staff member, and then we will do a slight change to the order of the agenda and go from that into updates from Kendall. But I'll go ahead and start with Jennifer.
Okay. I am the new cataloging and database coordinator. I work with Eric and Lisa and Rhonda and Jenny. for years. I started out in circulation. I started thinking, I'm sure things have changed quite a bit. When I was in circulation to how they are now, I remember still scanning books and everything. Some of our well, they might, but just, you know, the changes over the years. From there,
Okay.
Well, we would have had to dial in on the phone. So,
oh, it's not like the meeting.
yeah,
Okay.
we,
Okay. Could you come up? Sorry. Okay.
have to sit in the front to talk.
Yeah.
Okay, start it over.
And let me.
Okay. Yeah, Jennifer Schote. I'm the new cataloging and database coordinator here at RSA. Library experience, what I was just saying, I worked at Peoria Public Library for 22 years, started in 1997. In circulation department, worked there for a few years. I think when I left there, Cassandra actually had just started being the supervisor at that time. From there, I went to what we had, a business science and technology department. That's when we used to have departments split between children's and business and art and music. I did reference work there. From there, I moved up to technical services for my last 16 years. And originally when I started for cataloging, but also back up to interlibrary loan, which may be relevant even for this meeting, but once again, things have changed even from then to what I do now. I started thinking, interlibrary loan, do people remember the red and green bags? Are there people? Yes. You know, I mean, that's how long ago that it was. And I remember having just a couple of those was a big deal. You know, that just seems so much. Now you look at things and things have changed. You know, and that whole process changed too with system holds and things like that. Side note, I am attending ICC for the LTA certificate, and as long as everything goes as planned, I will have that completed at the end of the year. But I am very excited to be here, and I think that's it.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks.
We appreciate that. And that way, for members, you may start seeing a new name on
Yes.
emails and all of that good stuff. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kendall. I tried to open a lot of the documents
okay.
somewhere.
So, in the interest of everybody who attended this morning as well and who may attend for users group, I don't want you to hear this stuff 3 times, so I'll go a little quicker. So first off, I wanted to talk about, we are starting to implement things on the strategic plan, which, did you have that one open?
I do. Chrome, one of the tabs.
There it is.
Yep.
Okay, so out on the RSA website under the governance page, you can get to the 1-page or the full strat plan. Basically, the 1-page overview talks about our strategic directions and some goals underneath them. That's what we'll be working on the next probably 4 years or so. So in the first third of the year, actually, of this year, we'll be working mostly on technical stuff. I sent an email out the other day. We're updating Symphony. We'll be updating the website later this, whenever the beta is finished for the newer version. We've just rolled out RSA Cat Mobile, and we're working on templates with specific libraries now. We are putting in a new firewall. You all will see lots of email traffic about that because we need to check your IP addresses and any third-party products you may have authenticating. There's just a lot of things that was all in that long email that we will be doing, mostly technical. Again, we're rebuilding our help desk from scratch in Salesforce. It'll do a lot of things. It's got a ton of power, which means it'll do a lot of things and has a ton of power, and we have to figure out how to make it do that. So we actually have a third-party consultant who's helping us build that. We'll be starting that the Monday after users group, in fact, in February. So a lot of what we do, you'll see via software updates to make the system a little more stable. A lot of it you will not see directly, back-end hardware updates or like updates to the help desk, but those things will be very valuable to us over time. The other things that I had hoped to do starting off early in the year was putting a couple of committees together to look at things like membership levels Yeah, that's not going to happen. There's just not enough hours in the day to get all of that done, along with all of the technical stuff that we're doing. And when I said that we were going to do that, I completely forgot that I am basically out of pocket from March 9th until the second week of May. I'll be gone out of the country for a month. I come back, I have basically 2 weeks, and then we go to the big annual Searcy Dynex Users Conference for a week, and the week after that is Users Group and the board. So I'll get back. I have to get through all of the bills and administrative stuff that I've missed for a month. Then I have to get ready for Users Group and a conference all at the same time. And then, so we're talking mid-May before I'm back able to do work.
They can't see the screen.
Oh,
No? Well,
you should still be in. Almost can stop sharing.
pause, start, screen share. Screen. Okay.
I don't know how we got out of that.
So in essence, the first third of the year, tech stuff, and then you guys will be hitting a summer reading when we want to start forming some committees. So that's going to be fun. Other things that we'll be looking at, you'll see some more surveys coming out talking about, you know, committees, how you feel about the committees, what should committees be doing, do we have enough committees, do we need more committees, should we meet online, blah, 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 blah. You'll see some surveys about that. The membership said that you want to be more engaged and you like surveys and you like giving us feedback, and we are going to be taking advantage of that. So you may have noticed you've been seeing more surveys of things, policies and things like that. The people who are in the room, the people who are online, you guys have heard me say this before, you're the usual suspects. You know what's going on. But the people who don't attend these meetings, that's really the only way they have to give us feedback in many cases, because we're not getting emails or phone calls other than, hey, this thing's not working right. So we do get a lot of valuable feedback from people we don't normally interact with via those surveys. So that's been really good. Let's see. Yeah, I'm flying through this now. Okay, one other thing. So something that a lot of people have asked us for that we are working on and have worked on is a library of things search. So you may have Roku boxes, you may have mobile devices, you know, the little boxes that people can have mobile internet on. Hotspots, thank you. You may have games, toys, puzzles, you know, all kinds of non-book related realia or toys, right? So two big trends right now in the library world are find free, everybody's going find free, and Internet of Things. So the find free thing, if you want to go find free, talk to us, we can give you some guidance. As far as the Internet of Things goes, we thought about this quite a bit to come up with a way to do this. So we can build you an Internet of Things limit for your library's items. Most of the things that would fall under this are not holdable anyway, so we're just doing it per library right now. So for normal, we set one up for normal. So it's called normal PL and then library of things. You just do an empty search on it and it will return everything that meets the search criteria. And in this case, the search criteria is one of four things. So if it is item category 3, which is general format, if it is any of the item types that create realia or toy, it will get grabbed by this. If it is not in item type 3 or item category, sorry. If it's not item category 3 realia or toy, you can still have it show up in the library of things search by giving it an item category 4 or 5, not both, just one, of lib things. So like Fond du Lac has Rokus, right? But their Rokus are not, I believe they're equipment stream right, which does not fall under the toy or realia item category 3, right? A lot of libraries have all kinds of equipment, tables, chairs, TVs, roll around carts. These are not things patrons need. So we're not including equipment in library of things. But if you have specific things that you say, this is an equipment item, but we want it to appear in the library of things search, use item category 4, item category 5, set it to lib things, and then it will get returned in this search. So any one of 4 things will build to, for your library's items, will build to be returned in the search limit. So item category 3, realia or toy, item category 4, item category 5 of lib things. Any one of those 4 things is going to get returned in the search. If you would like us to make one of these searches for you, send an email to the help desk and say, hey, I would like an Internet of Things search limit added to my RSA cat page. And we will do that, and then all you have to do is select it, leave the search bar blank and hit go, and that will list everything in your library that currently meets those specifics. And so if we set one of these up for Fond du Lac and they ran it tomorrow, your Rokus aren't showing up. So you're going to have to go in and modify those items that you want to show up to have either item category 4 or 5 set to lib things. Any questions about that? Yes. Yes, sorry, library of things, yeah. Yes, no, and the search limit is actually named library of things. Yeah. The Internet of Things could be many things. Okay, I'm gonna run away then.
Okay, thank you, Kendall.
I have some work to do.
Okay, I'm back. All right, so the next major order of business, as we discussed at the last committee meeting, our current chair and co-chair had been serving for, I don't know, 7 years in those positions, and they may need a break. We may want some new input. So we recently, so yeah, at the last meeting, we announced that we would elect a new co-chair at this January meeting. Cassandra has graciously agreed to continue to serve as chair for another year so that the co-chair can kind of get up to speed. It's not a high pressure job, I promise, but that way, you know, and then next January, the co-chair will ascend to the glorious position of chair, and then we'll elect a new co-chair, and that way we'll kind of keep having some turnover so that people don't feel like they're stuck for years and years, and all of that. So is there anyone, I've heard maybe from one person who may be interested, but if there's anyone else, if you're in the room, please let me know. If you're online, please enter that in the chat. Anyone? Okay, well, no one is chiming in. So with the one person that I've spoken to about this, would you come up and introduce yourself? Okay. Cheryl Harlow from Brimfield is approaching the microphone. So if we don't hear from anyone else, we will do a little vote to affirm her as co-chair, but I'm going to give her the opportunity to introduce herself. So if you kind of come around here, just so that everyone can hear you.
I'm Cheryl Harlow, and I'm the library director at Brimfield Public Library District.
Okay, short and sweet. Thank you. Okay, could I have a motion to, what's the word I want, affirm Cheryl as co-chair of the circulation committee? Okay, we have a motion from Roxy. Do I have a second? A second from Carrie, and who beat Richard by a hair for the second. So, okay, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is, unless we were hearing any different from online, should we say the motion is passed? Okay, Cheryl is our new co-chair, and next January will likely ascend to to chair unless we, drastically change something or something comes up, and then we'll elect another co-chair. So I will tell you, it is, if you are wondering maybe next January if you would be interested, it is not a high pressure position. It really is moral support for me during meetings, make sure I press record, help call the motion, if we need to vote on something, kind of help call those. And, I would not turn down assistance with meeting prep, but other than that, it's really not, we would also like ideally someone who can also attend users group and help to kind of be a liaison from this committee to that. But we can we can work within whatever constraints you have if you are interested in helping to lead this committee. So, okay, thank you all very much. Yay! If you want to come up and sit up here, Cheryl. If you, okay. The next thing on the agenda is, as you likely know, this committee has a subcommittee. And in the subcommittee, we kind of realized the subcommittee is not covered in the bylaws or anything. It kind of falls under the heading of other committees may be formed as needed. And we just sort of in the subcommittee realized that we felt like we needed to kind of nail down sort of what is our purpose here, what is our charge, who are we? We occasionally had interest from other people about attending meetings or joining the subcommittee, and we just wanted to be able to put out more information of what this committee is and kind of who's on it. And so we wrote ourselves a charge and then decided that we should present it to the circulation committee for kind of your approval. We sort of wrote down what we think we do and want to make sure that the wider committee agrees that this is what the subcommittee is and should be doing. So I've got that up on the screen. If you can't see it, let me know. I am going to try to embiggen it a little bit. And I'm just going to read through this. I apologize. It's not super long though. A circulation policy subcommittee was formed at the circulation committee meeting on November 3rd, 2011. This subcommittee is responsible for the revision and creation of RSA circulation and hold policies. The subcommittee meets monthly or as needed. Essentially, we've been known to cancel meetings during summer reading. So it is comprised of 10 to 12 members from different RSA member libraries with liaisons from the RSA Member Services Department. A subcommittee chair will be elected annually in January with a limit of 2 consecutive terms. Our current subcommittee chair, just elected, is Carrie Gibbons from Washington. Members are expected to attend a majority of subcommittee meetings. If a member misses more than 6 meetings per calendar year without notice, committee leadership will contact them to confirm their resignation from the subcommittee. Membership in the subcommittee is open to directors and circulation staff of all levels. Members who are interested in joining the circulation policy subcommittee should contact the RSA Member Services Supervisor or the circulation policy subcommittee chair. Guests are welcome at meetings. So if you, kind of get wind that we're discussing a policy that you have a big stake in, feel free to come. I do appreciate a heads up, just partially so that I know whether we fit in the small conference room or whether to set up in the atrium. But guests are welcome at those meetings. And if you are someone who is, has been a guest a couple of times, if someone expresses interest in coming to a meeting, I usually recommend come and sit in on one as a guest and then decide if you're still interested after you've been through one. We do, I always kind of joke that we argue about commas a lot. So it is pretty nitty gritty on, very specific wording on policy. So if that's not your thing, But the current policy subcommittee is Carrie Gibbons, the chair, Richard Young, Cheryl Harlow, Greg Weidert, Nick Hulva, Cassandra Stokes, Victoria Volkman, Ginny Losey, Roxy Klassen, John Fisher, Jason Shirley, and Kayla Cuffle. And then RSA members are myself and Sarah Naslund, and then we have a rotating note taker, so who is either Jamie or Patty. So does anyone have any, questions or comments or concerns about that? Or does that, to the members of the committee who aren't on the subcommittee, kind of sound like what you thought we did or anything? Okay, thank you. Then we will, I don't know, since it's, let's vote just for the heck of it. Could I have a motion to approve the subcommittee charge? Nick has moved. Second? Carrie has seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you very much. That is passed. I didn't really think anyone was going to say no, but you know, I do appreciate also just because we do, you know, I'm hoping that we have people starting to come to this committee meeting who maybe haven't been here before and who go, what is that? You know, I don't want it to be a secret subcommittee that no one knows what we're up to. Please come visit, you know, join us. Sometimes we go to lunch after. It's very fun. So, okay. And then on that note, I've already introduced kind of that we do have a new chair of the subcommittee, who is Carrie. So, okay. So on that note, though, this is, for those who are following along, this is part C of the Circulation Policy Subcommittee update. It feels like we have been discussing the new user policy for a year, and it's entirely possible that we have been. This is the policy that sort of deals with when a new user comes to your library, whether especially if they're coming from another RSA member library and they have pre-existing fines. How do you deal with those fines? We recently did a survey of all membership, kind of asking for some feedback on sort of the two versions of the policy that we sort of discussed at the last users group meeting. And the feedback we got, it just kind of, it didn't lead us to a clear direction, you know, of one of those policies being more favored than the other, or one, you know, causing problems, but it did seem like kind of both versions created a certain amount of confusion, which is the opposite of what we want. For your kind of memory on this, let me see if I can pull up the drafts of those. Okay, this is one version, which is basically if a patron owes overdue fines on a previous account, the fines must be resolved according to issuing library policy before a new account can be created, which essentially says that whatever library you come to, they set their own policy of how they deal with new members. The other version of the policy was kind of the same point 4 under the policy, which was if a patron owes overdue fines, but they are in what we sort of colloquially refer to as in good standing, i.e. they only have late fees, but they're below whatever their previous library's block limit is. So like if you pull up the patron's account and they are delinquent, but the fines on their account are, say, under $5 if it's a Peoria library, or under $10 if the library has a $10 block limit, then you can go ahead and clear those fines and issue the card. Both of those have kind of a fair amount of wiggle room and do sort of, I guess I understand why there may be some confusion, and they were difficult to word sort of with clarity. One thing that we started thinking about as we were reviewing the responses to the survey was the original version of this policy, the one that we're currently operating under, referred to the $5 fine block limit, which used to be the universal fine block limit. And that was what led us down this path of we need to reevaluate this policy because that $5 is no longer universal. We've kind of come, I don't know, full circle and gone back to maybe we should just set an amount, you know, a clear cut across the board. If the fines are less than this, wipe them off. If the fines are more than this, then you should at least be having a conversation with the library that charged those fines, maybe. You know, your patron should be making some step toward clearing them up, or at least contacting that library, or, you know, something needs to happen if they're more than this. So we, in the subcommittee, have started going, well, what if we just increase that limit because to kind of the maximum level of, you know, the variable fine blocks, because I don't believe anyone's fine block limit is above $20. And $5, you know, if you're thinking about it, is relatively low in terms of fines. To say, you know, start jumping through hoops and getting, you know, approval to forgive fines under, you know, at like $6 maybe doesn't seem worth it. But when it's $16, that starts feeling a little bit more like, okay, that's more of a reasonable point to say we need to be having, well, if it's $26, I should say, is more of a point at which, okay, maybe we need to be at least having a conversation here. So the current sort of draft, this is again very, very much a draft, is fines up to $20 may be removed by the new card issuing library. If a patron wishes to pay fines, the funds will remain at the library where they made the payment. We decided to spell that out, which was not previously spelled out in the policy. That is, that I know there may be discussion of that is set in other policies that are not currently being evaluated. Fines in excess of $20 must be paid. Patrons may pay these fines at the new card issuing library. Funds will remain at the library where they are paid. The billing library should be contacted before adjusting any fines over $20. So that's not necessarily to say you have to sit down and say, hey, you patron, you must pay these fines, but that you should not sort of forgive beyond that point. So that's sort of the direction we're heading in now, just kind of based on the feedback and depending on what we hear at this committee meeting. One very helpful thing that was pointed out in the survey, though, is that as part of evaluating this policy, we are also going to have to update the fine block limits policy, which said you should set a fine block of $5. Somehow it escaped our notice in, you know, opening up kind of the ability to set your fine block at a different level, that policy needs to be updated as well. That one will be pretty straightforward. We'll just say, you know, whatever the max current fine block is, you know, we'll probably say something to the effect of you should set a fine block limit not to exceed $20 if that's the highest one, you know, and then go from there with writing that policy. And then y'all can tell us whether you approve of it or not. But anyway, with that kind of different sort of slightly different direction from where we've been going in the past, is there any discussion of that? And if there's discussion in the room, I'll do my best to relay it so that it is audible online. So. Yes, please.
It says fines up to $20 may be removed. Does that mean each library has the option to set it lower?
That's a good question. As I said, this is very much a draft. If the feeling is that we should rephrase that to fines up to $20 are to be removed, I think we said maybe up to $20, you know, so that someone doesn't go, well, they had $7, what do I do? You know, fines to the upper limit, but is more the concern the maybe removed part of the sentence, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to have the option to set it lower.
Well, and if that is a sticking point, then that is worth knowing. Like I said, this is so much a draft. Any input we have as far as is this a good direction to pursue or not is useful. So, okay, so one concern, so would that be something though, does the $20 feel like too high a limit? Anyone?
I personally think it's too.
That's fine, that's fine.
I think the wording of that sentence was supposed to be talking about which library removed the fine. You know, I think when we were writing that, is it the new card issuing that library?
Oh, yeah.
Removing the fines, or if it's the original.
Well, there's, yeah.
Because it used to be like I wouldn't, if somebody from out the park was coming to finalize the new card, I wouldn't remove those fines. I would part of it when I said
Right.
I think that's what it's talking about.
Well, but it is, I mean, I guess both are kind of rolled into that statement is, you know, so either way, we should probably break those two things out to clarify who removes the fines, and then is $20 a good place? Yes.
When they went to the audience conversation.
Yes. So the question is in point 4A, which I have on the screen, we're talking about that line that says fines up to $20 may be removed by the new card issuing library. And the discussion we're having is basically that we may need, there are kind of 2 points in this statement which may need to be broken out to clarify. Part of it is who should remove the fines. Should the new card issuing library go ahead and knock off those fines? Or do you need to call the library that charged those fines and have them remove the fines? And then the other point is kind of is the $20 a good place to set this limit, or is that perhaps too high?
And then Lori Creedy, she said, you're a fine priest, I don't feel comfortable asking for fine when the
Okay, and then we have the fine-free libraries who are don't feel comfortable kind of accepting those fines, especially with knowing that those fines stay at the library, that it feels kind of weird. And that is kind of, I think, shaping up to be an interesting discussion as more libraries do become fine-free. Kind of, if you are fine-free and someone wants to pay their fines with you, what do you do? And does it make sense for those fines to stay there? And I think that's a discussion that is warranted. Yeah.
There's nothing stopping the fine-free libraries though, if they have to collect fines to just
Right.
money to the library.
Right. We'd,
That would have collected those fines.
right. We have, for those who are online, we have the point that if you are fine-free and you take in a fine, it is fine to send that to the library that billed for that item if you're not comfortable accepting that fine. So, and maybe we do need to codify that in some way, though. Yeah.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
So regarding that $20 limit, I mean, if we are going to allow people to continue to set that lower, then should we be rewrite? I mean, that's kind of like
Right.
just sticking with the old policy. Like if we're not making that $20 mandatory, it's still letting
Well,
people leave it at 5, then it's like,
then we're basically, yeah, the first question is if we're allowing the option of libraries to set the limit lower, then basically we're back to the policy of in good standing at that library. So if that is, if this talking about a different policy direction may lead us to clarity to go, that one we had before is the right way to go, which is why I just want to have this discussion. And then what was your second question?
my second question is regarding fines and the new card issuing library. So if somebody has fines and they're trying to sign up for a new card and they're at that library and they're like, okay, here's my money, so I'm going to pay this off so I can sign up for a card. Considering the fact that that money isn't going to go back to the original library, well then the original library should have, I feel like if the money is staying in the new card issue library, then that's the new card issuing library's decision whether or not to forgive the,
Right.
like adding on around.
Right. So then the second question is basically kind of since the money stays at the, at the library where a fine is paid, they're the ones who are keeping that money. Does it make sense to have to go through another library to get approval of whether or not to keep that money, basically, when it's not going to be sent back to the billing library anyway?
That brings it back to the discussion, though. Another library is making the determination to issue a card when that patron has a card at a different library and they are not standing with that library. That's why the original issue library said, we are not good with where you left us.
Right.
So then there's.
Yeah. And then that one is basically, the patron had an agreement with the previous card issuing library. I'm just reviewing this for the online folks real quick. Had an agreement with the previous card issuing library that left them in not good standing and not able to check out. What kind of issues do we create by having another library be able to basically say, no, never mind, it's fine, so, yeah.
Okay, from the chat, Nita Smith asked, can we choose to not charge the fine? Maybe she needs to that.
Right. Okay. And then we have a question from the chat of can the library issuing the new card choose not to collect the fine, not to just forgive the fine, essentially. Am I reading that right? Okay. So yeah, these are all good questions, and they're ones that this is why this policy we've been discussing this policy for a year, and I don't know what the solution is, and I feel like I feel pretty strongly that this one really does have to be driven to a large degree by membership, because this is a policy that touches almost every library almost every day, several times a day, as opposed to some of the other ones of like getting a damaged item and delivery. Hopefully that doesn't happen that often, but this is going to touch everyone a lot. Yeah.
Two more things. Megan Green, I don't know how to say it. The fine-free library could ask the patron to pay online.
That's we have a good point from the chat that if you are a fine-free library and aren't comfortable accepting fines, you could pull it up in RSA CAT and allow the patron to pay online. or through the app. And then the second point is,
And then the other, Lori Creevy says, I'm in agreement for us who are fine-free to forward it onto the billing library. I need to keep it as easy to the patrons here fine-free.
and she said Danvers, is that right?
It's
Okay. And then we also had in the chat from someone at a Find Free library that those of you who are in the chat probably saw the question, actually. I don't know why. I probably don't have to repeat quite so many things in the chat, but we are. But the, yeah, so maybe we should put that in a policy. If you're Find Free, here's what you should do if someone wants to pay a fine. You know, say, pay through the app, forward it to the billing library. That may be something. This is from a later agenda item, but one thing that I'll come back to this, but we would be interested in possibly setting up some like networking working groups, like using Google Groups or something like that, to allow libraries to have targeted discussions. And one of the things we've thought about setting up is a Find Free Libraries Google group, so that people who are staff at Find Free Libraries or people who are with libraries that are thinking about going Find Free can have that way to share conversation. So I don't, you know, I just to clarify, I didn't expect this discussion to lead us to, oh, here's exactly how we're going to edit that policy and we will be done and let's present it at the users group next month. I just want to thank you all for the discussion. And if you do have something about this policy that you didn't feel comfortable saying in front of the group, or you hear from other staff members at your library, feel free to email these to me. And you know, I can anonymize them if you wish, to bring these up as discussion points as we continue to try to work on evaluating this policy. So, but I just, the more honest discussion we have about this, and maybe we will get to the point where, you know, we just have to say, here's what it is, take it or leave it. But I'm hoping that we can come up to something that at least addresses a majority of concerns. But yeah. So any further discussion on that at this time? But again, please feel free to email me if, okay, so that was that one. Other policies that we are planning to start reviewing in the near future in the subcommittee. Obviously, we're going to continue working on that one. But the other ones that we've been talking about kind of needing to review is the Patron Notes policy. And this one we've just started digging into, and one of the things that we've been looking at is sort of, do we run into any issues of patron privacy by including item information in a patron note? So we have done our due diligence, we've sent it to the FOIA hotline, and I had a conversation with Joe at Rails about this. And the general consensus seems to be that there hasn't really been a good test case of this yet, of whether these notes are FOIable, but the consensus seems to be that they are going to be protected under the, what is it called, the Library Records Confidentiality Act, like Circ History is. So also partially because you kind of have to be able to note what you're talking about. Although I think one of the things that we will be at least strong in wording on as we evaluate that policy is the need to clear notes once they're no longer relevant. That way we're not keeping, you know, item identifying information connected to the patron record longer than we need to. That way it's only, you know, because it's like, well, you know, we're sending billing notices and things like that for items too. You kind of have to be able to tell a patron what they're paying for. You kind of have to be able to note, if you're going to bill a patron for damage, what that was. So from what we can tell from our research, it looks like we don't need to make a major change to our practice on that. But if you do hear something different, or you have a conversation that leads you to greater concern about that, let us know. The other one is kind of the retention schedule for expired cards and like kind of reciprocal deletion forms, and that's another one that we will be discussing. If you have information about what your requirements are as far as how long you need to retain records, please share that with us, because that's something we will be looking at as we evaluate that policy, because we don't want to set a policy that puts a library in a bad position. So. And then another thing that comes up fairly often in the subcommittee is sort of these occasional concerns. They're kind of this nebulous area of like, well, that's not quite a policy that RSA should be telling you exactly what to do, but an area where some guidance and recommendations can be helpful. Like it's, you know, kind of a discussion that we'll have under circulation topics of sort of like best practices for giving out patron info over the phone or something like that, or what types of ID you accept when someone comes in to sign up for card, like what proofs of address you use. There's several other specific things that escape my mind currently that have come up in sort of this context that is sort of like maybe, or like what user profile you use when you're setting up a book club card, you know, things sort of like that, that's not really like a policy, or maybe things that only affect you internally, so we don't feel comfortable setting up policy, you know, a RSA-wide policy for something that, well, if you do it wrong, it's really only going to be your bad day, you know, but that don't quite make sense to have like a big overarching policy, but that some recommendations and some guidance might be helpful. So we're trying to, you know, figure out kind of how to deal with some of those. So we may throw them under guides, you know, just kind of under that heading, or make them best practices or recommendations or things like that. But if there are areas where you have kind of struggled for what should I be doing with this, please share those. And some of them, you know, may, you know, sometimes there may be something in there that we go, oh, we can't have people not doing it that way. And then we say, okay, maybe that becomes a policy. But so that, anyone from the Circ policy subcommittee, does anyone have anything that I have neglected to cover as far as our update from what we've been working on there? Okay, I will move along to circulation topics. And again, these are just kind of topics for discussion for, you know, I know some libraries are like evaluating their policies on some of these things and just kind of trying to decide whether they want to change it. So if we could just have a wide sort of discussion of how does your library deal with this? What are you doing? Why? What experiences have you had with that sort of thing? And the first one is the topic of sort of age limits on cards, and kind of from two different directions. One is, do you have a minimum age for a patron to get a card? And then the next one is sort of, at what point do you move them from a juvenile card to an adult card? Do you have a YA card in between? Have what you've done created any challenges? Do you have any, you know? So I'm just going to open that up for general discussion. Let's start with maybe kind of the topic of, do you have a lower age limit on your cards? Yeah.
We used to have, they had to write their first and last name.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got the student cards, and the schools put them on their school lists, which was great, their supply lists. But our school also has like preschool, and that was on their list. And it's like, we can't really require that.
Right.
So we kind of, I mean, we probably don't go baby yet, but
Right.
we kind of had to drop that down because
Right.
we're going to put it on the school list and then tell them, oh,
Right. That's what you're going to school to learn.
So that was kind of
Okay. So for online attendees, Roxy just told us at Morton, their requirement used to be that a child had to be able to write their first and last name, but then they started working with the schools to issue cards, and the schools have a preschool, and those students are not able to, and the schools were requesting that students get cards as part of their supply list. And so they kind of ran into that. So now they have kind of gone away from having that requirement, and now basically if they want, you know, if a child wants a card, they issue one. Anyone else? Yeah, 5? Okay, 5. A couple of people have an age limit of 5. I'll speak up from at least when I left Peoria, their practice was that there was no lower age limit. And what I would tell parents, you know, was this is not our policy. If you want to get your 6-month-old a card, you can. But I would say my personal thing would be to encourage you to wait till it has some sort of meaning for your child. The thing we ran into a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you have run into this, is people are wanting to get cards for sometimes their very young children to have 5 extra DVDs that they can check out. So how much you want to kind of entertain that reasoning is up to you as a library, but that was what we ran into at Peoria. Yeah.
Washington's 4, but
Okay.
like there's a restriction on
Okay.
Think that they can only check out G-rated movies till they are 14 to get that YA card.
Okay, at Washington, they have an lower age limit of 4, but there's a restriction on juvenile cards that only allows them to check out G-rated movies until they move up to a YA card. So, okay,
We don't have any age limit. The juvenile and the YA cards can't get R-rated.
okay. Pekin has a similar thing. Juvenile and YA cards can't check out R-rated movies, essentially. They don't have a lower age limit, though, right?
I'm not really working on this now because right now anybody can check out any rate.
Right.
We have people who have cards for the 1-year-olds, and you do the 5 extra.
Right, right. And yeah, Dunlap is struggling this because they currently do not have an age limit. And yeah, and you kind of get into sort of a little bit of a philosophical sort of like, you know, is it sort of our role to tell children what movies they can and can't watch? Should that be a parental decision? You know, but then sometimes you get yelled at by a parent for letting their child check out an R-rated movie. So it's, so I think it's probably a decision that every library kind of has to make for themselves, you know, but.
The basic, everybody using 14. We don't,
Okay.
anybody can check out anything. Don't police that.
Right.
That's parents' responsibility.
Right.
Child's in the library.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
We don't restrict who can check out
Yeah.
material.
And Cheryl is saying at Brimfield, they don't have any restrictions on what can be checked out by what card type. At Peoria, we didn't have any restrictions. The only restriction we had was that there was a lower overall item limit of like 20 rather than 50. Do we have something from the chat? Did I see something?
Quincy, we don't have any distinction on the cards. Quincy said that they do not have a lower age limit, but patrons 9 and younger limited to juvenile materials on the children.
Okay, Quincy has people 9 and younger are limited to materials from the juvenile department. So yeah, so there's a lot of different, basically there's probably as many different policies on this as there are libraries. And I don't know if this is an area we would ever be able to standardize. I'm going to say my personal piece here, which is if we were going to try to standardize any part of this, it wouldn't be so much the lower age limit, it would be at what point they move from a juvenile. They should have an adult card. And I would just, me personally, I would just say at 18, you're an adult. But if you do have type restrictions, then maybe it makes sense to move those earlier. So then if we can move kind of to the other part of this discussion of sort of at what point do you move children to an adult card or do you use a YA profile? And just kind of a survey of at what ages do you do this, or do you use other markers? Like at Peoria, we were just kind of like, once you start high school, we give you an adult card. Okay, Galesburg did 16, basically when the child can bring in their own driver's license.
It used to be 14, but we looked at it a while back and we're like, if you're under 18, you can't enter into a contract, so you're a juvenile parent.
Okay, Fond du Lac used to do 14, but has moved to 18, basically because that's when you can legally enter into contracts, which, yeah.
That's kind of the problem that Washington is running into, is we have a YA card that goes from 14 to 18, but they still have to get their parents' permission at that point, and it's like, when it comes to teenagers, like getting all those moving pieces together to get that kid a library card, or to, you know, are kind of difficult. They're not always into their parents, or it's like their parents aren't
Right.
present or whatever. So it's like, yeah, we've got that YA from 14 to 18.
Okay.
It's a little awkward.
And Washington has the challenge of they do YA from 14 to 18, but because at that age, children are often coming in alone, you know, or yeah. Well, and that's one of the things about having it, you know, when they're say 16, that's when they can get to the library on their own and can be kind of reasonably expected, more reasonably expected to return their own items, I guess is logic I have heard. So I don't know. Yeah.
When we went up to 18, the one thing we've been doing is if you're in high school and you come in and you don't have your parent, we'll start to issue the card. We'll basically do a temporary card and let you check out 2 items. Like your parent has to come in. A long time ago, I did have a couple parents when the sign was 8 with 14. I had a couple parents who like,
let me review that for online real quick. When Fond du Lac, help me remember this, when Fond du Lac had kind of the 14 as the starting point, they ran into issues of parents essentially saying, I did not give my child permission to get a library card. I am not responsible for these materials. And at Washington, wait, with the Y, if a child who's younger than 18 but like older than say 14 comes into Fond du Lac and wants to get a card, they will often issue a temporary card. Like if a child comes in without their parents, they'll issue a temporary card that'll allow them to check out a limited number of materials. But then in order to make it a full privileged library card, the parent will have to come in and sort of sign off the, yes, I am, responsible for these. Yeah.
Just to add on to Nick, we can start a card and send the 14 to 18-year-old home with the permission slip. Those permission slips so rarely come back. And, it's like, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. But exactly. Yeah. If you're like a latchkey kid like I was, you're in the library by yourself all the time. But yeah, Washington sometimes does permission slips for those YA cards, but they rarely actually come back to the library. So, but anyway, basically there's a million different ways to do that. So it's an interesting topic of discussion, and I just find it interesting to hear kind of how other people handle it and what challenges they run into with whatever practice they use. It's one of those things where it probably means that I'm a huge nerd, but I actually just find it really interesting. But anyway, thank y'all for just kind of having that discussion, because I know some libraries are looking at evaluating that, and hearing from other members what you do and why you do it is useful. On a related note to that one, the next point under that is, if you have a policy that you've written, if you have policy handbooks that you use internally and would be interested in sharing, this is not me, this is 100% me throwing work at Jamie, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that we could start hosting some sort of a policy sharing page, but it's only going to be as good as member participation in it is. We would rely on you to be willing to share your, things from your policy handbook, how you've written these things up, especially if you're a library that has like worked with a legal team on these things. Those would probably be very valuable to share if you are able and willing. And I realize that a lot of that discussion is probably going to be kind of directors, but if that is something that we can ever get some participation from members going and some interest from members going, I would be interested in us hosting some sort of a policy sharing thing. So just throwing that out there, that would be cool if you want to do that. All right. I'm going to move on to this RSA update section. We already did Kindle's part. Spring trainings, I am in the middle of trying to get spring offsite trainings scheduled. Trainings in January will be here at East Peoria. We'll have a CERC training and a HOLDS training. If you are more than a half hour away and would like to host a training, please reply to the survey. But yeah, cataloging trainings, I believe, are mostly scheduled, or they've at least started to be in touch with the hosting libraries. So, and I've gotten a fair amount of responses on CERC ones as well. So those will be, stay tuned for more info. I'll send a big master list once we have them all scheduled. Last December, for the first time, I tried doing an evening training. It's something that I've had interest from a couple of libraries, especially kind of larger libraries that are more likely to have like part-time evening staff. And that a lot of people had kind of challenges getting to RSA trainings during the workday, basically, if it's someone who's working evenings or weekends. I didn't have a huge turnout, but I was still happy with the turnout I had. It was shorter. It was more, this is your training for your part-timer who only works 20 hours a week, and maybe they don't need super in-depth knowledge, but you want to give them a little bit more of a start, or you're having trouble getting them trained internally because you and they are never there at the same time. So I'm planning to offer another one of those probably in early March. So if that's something that would be useful to you or your staff, let me know. And those I am offering in the East Peoria area. You know, so Fond du Lac, Washington, Morton, Peoria, if you feel left out of the other offsite trainings, this is your time to shine. But, you know, so that'll also, you know, hopefully be an option for, you know, some staff who maybe have a little more trouble getting into one. But if that's something you're interested in hosting, I'm not going to do a big survey about that because it's just kind of a little bit more of a limited thing. But send me an email if you're interested in possibly hosting like an evening training or something like that. Also this summer, our Pinecrest Bridge is, well, in addition to the Murray Baker Bridge being closed, our Pinecrest Bridge is also likely to be, it will definitely be under construction and will likely be closed for a chunk of the summer. So we may be looking for many offsite opportunities, but possibly closer to home. So if you are a library in the more immediate area, we might be hitting you up for various things. So hope you like us. I don't know. I'll bring snacks. But I do just want to thank, you know, our membership has been great about responding to those things and being willing to host us. And even if you're, even in the people who are kind of too close to really be a, you know, host for kind of the offsite trainings, the interest is really, it's nice to hear. So thank you for that. Membership updates, as far as that goes, we're really just starting to, Astoria is starting to work on cataloging. That's kind of the only update we have so far. Oh, I didn't put this on the agenda, but I should mention it. If your library runs out of barcodes, give me a call. Basically, we, just to clarify, RSA does not provide barcodes for libraries, but we can give you, you know, the list of kind of vendors that a lot of libraries work with, the encoding standards that they need to meet. We can kind of help verify that, like, if you're going to hit the end of a number range, that you're not going to roll into another library's prefix or something like that that might cause problems. I'm also, you know, at some libraries, there's enough turnover that this becomes an issue. If you don't mind sharing with me, I would, the more I'm trying to start tracking which barcode vendors different libraries use, because I have had several times that a new director has called, or a new librarian at a school has called and said, I'm out of barcodes, I have no idea who to contact. So I'm going to start trying to track that at least a little bit, so that if I do get those calls, someone can help. So if you would share that, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, that's the other thing, is on our website, we have a link to ID Label's ordering portal, and it's the Rails ordering thing, and there is a little group discount as well. So if you know, are looking at ID Label, which is kind of the one we recommend, but if you look at it and you go, oh, they're too expensive, you know, ask them about that Rails group discount. One reason we do kind of recommend ID Label is they are in contact with us fairly routinely, which is kind of nice to know. There have been occasionally, you know, times where there's a problem where their engineers apply the wrong encoding standard or something, and it's nice to know that, to know who to reach out to fix it. Or you know, times when a library is going to roll into a new, turn over a new number in their thing, to go, oh, Peoria is going from 133 to 134. Is it a problem that they call and check, you know, as opposed to just having duplicate numbers or something like that. So, so we do recommend them, but you do also get a discount. So if you need to order barcodes and you use ID Label, go through the link on our website, so you get that discount. Was there something else I was supposed to say about that? I think that was mostly it. I did want to just kind of share that if you are willing to share what vendor you're using, please do, because. Oh yeah. If I can't. There's no way I can make you do this. But if you are running out of barcodes and needing to order more, I would request, if you think of it and have time, if you are the person who does this, that you request you know, a set of sample, a proof of sample barcodes, and send them to me so I can double check them. That's all. Okay, RSA Day is coming up in March. I feel like I'm moving through this procedure too fast, so you're going to have a robust discussion at the end. But RSA Day is coming up March 19th, I believe. If you want to come, please register soon. Here, let me actually, let me pull up the L2 event for you. We have, last time I checked, we had over 100 registered. We are capping registration at 200. But this will be at Washington this time at 5 points. The L2 event makes it look like it's all at the library, but it is in fact not. We have several banquet rooms at 5 points booked, but Washington District Library is what's available as a location in L2. So we will provide free lunch and excellent keynote from John Traska of every library. Yeah, no, don't worry. No. Yeah. But if you want to come and you want that great free lunch from Correct Pepper, lunch boxes, sandwich should be good. Register soon, especially if you're doing something where like you're bringing your whole staff and using it as a staff development day. Please register soon, because it felt, last year we hit 150 and had to go to a wait list pretty quick. This year, like I said, last time I checked, we were already over 100 out of our kind of 200 max. Should be a slightly better situation for parking and stuff as well, and all of that. But we have a lot of exciting breakout sessions. Please come. Yeah, John, the keynote speaker, John Traska, is excellent, and I think it will be something that is kind of, you go to one of his things and you're like, the libraries can do everything. It's great. So he's very motivating. So I highly recommend coming. The next thing is we've had a few requests for will we be putting out any promotional materials for the app. Right now we just do not really have anyone on staff who can do that. In the past, we've had great promotional materials for like RSA Cat and things like that. Those were made by staff at member libraries, not by RSA. So oftentimes member libraries will graciously share the things that they have created internally. So if your library is doing anything like that, please share. Kendall didn't mention it, but he mentioned it in the database committee meeting. We do have 3 positions that we aim to fill later this year, one of which is like an admin marketing guru of some sort that I'm hoping will maybe be able to take on some of that sort of thing. But right now with the staffing we have, we just kind of are not really able to put, to create that type of promotional material at this point. But if you do at your library, please share, and you're willing to share, that's a great benefit to all of our membership. So, and I'm just going to take the second to shout out Jamie Jones, who I know at Peoria, who made some of those promotional materials for RSA Cat way back when. So, and I apologize if there's someone else who's made wonderful promotional materials that I don't know about, but we do appreciate that. And we appreciate it when members are willing to share those. Okay, and then back to the topic I talked about, potential sort of networking, sharing, I don't know what we want to call them, but we do have, kind of accounts so that we can set up Google groups for discussion. One that I think would be of benefit would be the Find Free Libraries, but off the top of your head, do you have any other sort of topics that you think might be useful? Of course, kind of like the idea of doing a policy webpage, this is only going to be as good as the participation in it. If people don't participate and share and post to these things, then they won't be used, but if you know of any topics right now that you've been like, man, I really wish I could talk to other libraries who are dealing with this. I know like either Swan or Prairie Cat has like an RFID working group. But does it, any ideas, any thoughts? Yeah.
Okay, so Lillian has Hope Group.
Like a reader's advisory sort of thing, or? Oh, a book, like book clubs, okay, okay.
These poster libraries. Okay, so there is that, RSA book groups, that works.com. This poster library schedule is available.
Oh,
Actually, I think there was one on our website.
what was that one? RSA, well, I guess if I pull up the chat, she'll tell me.
RSA book group. There is one in our
That PB Wiki,
works.
oh, PB Works. Nice. Hey, would you look at that?
This actually links from our website.
Okay, cool. You know, I did know about this. But yeah, FYI, if you did not know about this, yeah, so if you have internal library run book clubs, that way you don't all do the Goldfinch at the same time.
What site is that?
Here, I'll send it out in the meeting, in the notes. It should be in the chat log with the things, but I'll make sure to include this link with the notes. But yes, so things similar to this that, you know, might be useful, but I like the idea of, you know, an opportunity for Find Free libraries to talk about, you know, the specific things you run into, or especially for libraries that are considering going Find Free. I love the book groups idea. But yeah. Outreach. Outreach would be a great one, because that is.
About census.
Oh, census would be a good one. Census.
Dunlap's having a training
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, let me pull that up on L2 actually. Dunlap is having a, let's see if I can find it.
It's the day of the certain policies.
Okay, cool. No, that's cool. All right, everyone, anyone who misses the policy subcommittee meeting to go to this is officially excused. But yeah, so there's this census thing coming up at Dunlap that I agree census would probably be a good sort of Google Groupie type thing. For all I know, something may come out of this as well. So if you do attend this, and it does, please share. But yeah, hold that up as an interesting thing. Anytime, you know, I've been doing my newsletter for a few months now. Anytime you have a special thing coming up that you want, you know, a little extra attention on, or you think like, boy, this would really be helpful to a lot of libraries, please share it with me. There, you know, if there's not a newsletter coming up, I have no problem with doing a listserv post, you know, kind of blast of just like, hey, this is coming soon. This might be interesting to you. You know, I've also seen, it probably falls under the heading of outreach, but a lot of good activities for like patrons with dementia, things like that. But there's a ton of stuff that libraries are doing that any way that we can facilitate you sharing those with each other would be great. So please don't be shy, brag about yourselves and share that with us. Okay. The next thing is the thing that I'm very sorry, but I do have to say, please put full library names on delivery labels. Bear in mind that there is not only a Pleasant Plains branch of Prairie Skies, but there is a Pleasant Plains school. If you just put Pleasant Plains, it may end up at the wrong place. But out of kind of that sort of delivery labels discussion, would it be at all helpful to you as libraries to have something like a cheat sheet of commonly messed up ones, like the libraries where it's a name change and it's different from the code? Okay, the consensus, I'm seeing a lot of nods around the room, is that that would be helpful. I'll work with Robert. He and I have been talking about doing it anyway to kind of create a cheat sheet of the most commonly sort of messed up ones. Yeah. Yes, so we have Scott County CUSE, which is now Winchester Schools, and the items ended up at Stark County Schools. So that's definitely one that'll go on the list, is all the S County something schools. So, okay, Robert and I will get going on that, and we'll post it somewhere. Yeah. If you do PLD instead of public library district, that my understanding, I have not heard differently from Robert, is that is fine, that PL is fine, that HS is fine for high school, but that just the library name, you know, you could say Danvers TL, but just Danvers is not great, or, you know, Village of, you could, I don't know, Avon Public Library District will probably get to the right place and not go to Avon schools. But yeah. The other thing, there's been a lot of discussion of this in sort of larger Rails meetings and from the state library. If you do self-service holds and you are including full names on the holds wrappers, I would strongly encourage you to start finding alternatives in the near future. There is already, there's like, as far as I know, litigation ongoing in the Chicago area of, you know, patrons objecting to having their full name on the hold wrapper because, you know, of kind of basically library records confidentiality is, you know, and I will tell you from experience at Peoria with self-service holds and full names on hold wrappers, I would catch patrons going through going, oh, that's my neighbor, I just want to see what they're reading. So if you think patrons don't look, they do. If this is something that you are currently doing, I would strongly recommend that you know, start looking at alternatives. There are ways in workflows to do, you know, first 3 letters of last name and last 4 digits of card number, things like that. There may be in future upgraded ways to like have a patron select like an alias or something, or to assign them an alt ID for the holds wrapper. That's something that might be coming. I think some more work of whether it works and how it works and all that. But, you know, and, you know, maybe it's something you let patrons opt into, and if they don't care and want their name out there, fine, but you've given them the opportunity to do something different. I don't know how you do it. I don't care how you do it, but for your own protection from potential litigation, I would recommend that if you currently do this, that you start working toward a way to stop, basically. And the other thing that still happens is we still get, you know, in books at other places, you'll see a transit label or a holds label or a checkout slip that still includes full patron name, full PID. Please do not include that on your receipts. You know, just, I mean, quite aside from kind of the privacy issues, there's also just the, if someone finds one of those receipts on the ground and walks into a library with self-checks and keys in that number, you know, is kind of like, I mean, we should of course be protecting our patrons' privacy as just sort of a thing that we should do. But, you know, quite aside, you know, even if that doesn't move you as a concern, the potential for people checking out on other people's cards should. So please, if you are not sure how to adjust your printed receipts, give me a call, give us a call. Member Services is happy to walk you through receipt printer settings if you're not sure how to remove that, if it's currently on there. That is something I may try to talk the policy subcommittee into working with me on actually making a policy to not do this. And then it'll come back to you to approve it anyway. But that is it is the strongest recommendation I can make to change your practices if you are currently including that information without actually making it an official policy. Please take that under advisement. And that is my soapbox for today. So I'm going to open up the floor for general sharing and things like that. I will announce though that Robert has told us if anyone in the room would like to have a little tour of the delivery hub and see their new sorting setup, he is happy to have us come over and do that. So let me know at the end of the meeting if you are interested in that, and I'll let Robert know we're coming and do that. But yeah, so this is just time for general sharing, member updates, any exciting wintry programs your library has done, or new, I don't know, initiatives, or also bad things, weird challenges you've come across, any problems you've had. I saw a hand.
Did anyone get the Baker and Taylor library cat calendar this year? My cat's in it.
Okay, this is very exciting news. Cheryl Harlow's cat is in the current year's Baker and Taylor cat calendar. So if you got it, please look. What month?
May.
For the month of May. So that's very exciting. I like that.
We should do a newsletter
I know, we will make your member pet spotlight or something. Very nice. There may be a Rails fan club coming, so, okay. Anything else? Come on, y'all, we gotta make this meeting last at least another 15 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
Just, patron privacy with,
Oh.
with, keeping up polls
Mhm.
has been a bit of an issue lately in Washington.
Okay.
And I guess I was wondering if any of you had like the same issues or the same, or how to handle. I feel like there's been an influx of people coming in who want to pick up a hold for someone else but don't have that person's library card. Like the rule in Washington is, if you're picking up a hold, you either have to be that person or you have to have given your life. You know, like you have
Right.
to have that person's library card. And so like. I mean, I feel it's just been a lot
Okay.
lately, and then we're having to be like, I'm sorry, like, but,
Right.
but you can't, and then there's anger, and then,
Yeah. All right.
so I don't.
Okay. Well, before we get into the discussion, let me update online with what we're talking about. Carrie's brought up the issue at Washington. They've had a lot of trouble recently with people coming in to pick up holds that are not the person the hold is for and do not have that person's card. And you know, their practice is that you can only either pick up your own holds, or if you have that person's card, then you're kind of understood to have their permission to pick up the holds. But other than that, they do not, you know, allow other patrons to pick up their holds. Hmm? Oh, yeah. So there are the linked accounts on the app. I've seen some libraries do things in notes where they say this person has permission to pick up this person's holds. Right. So there are the hold permission slips options. At Peoria North, at least, our practice was kind of, if you resided at the same address, was sort of how we, you know, if we could confirm that it's going to the right place. Even that, I mean, there are times I can think of that, you know, a child may not, like a teen may not want their parents to know what they're reading, or a spouse may want to check out something that they don't want their spouse to see. But, you know, with self-service holds, you can only be, yeah. Right. But then when you get into the self-service holds with the full name on the spine anyway, then, yeah, which is another reason not to do that.
Confirm to you that for your kid, but I'll take it back and if your address matches,
right.
Or I'll check it out.
Right.
At worst, I can't somebody's hold.
Right.
Which is bad, but I've never really had to.
Okay.
But I won't be like, yes, this is for your son. And it's, you know.
Right. Okay. That's Nick has said at Fond du Lac, you know, kind of the assumption is that if someone is coming in to pick up a hold, they know there's a hold there. They've probably been in touch with the person who got the notification that the hold was ready. They, you know, it's more likely that they are legitimately picking up the hold. It's sort of, you know.
Yeah, we're different. We don't have self-service.
Oh, yeah. And to clarify, at Washington, it's not self-service holds. The holds are behind the desk.
I'm trying to figure out that line between protecting patron privacy and also providing access.
Right.
Like, because it's like, the chances are that this person coming in to get a hold not for themselves, they're probably not up to something nefarious, but I feel like protecting patron privacy is one of our
big things, right?
Big deals, and just because they're kids or spouses, like, doesn't mean they aren't entitled to that privacy.
Right.
So I'm trying to find that line, and it's hard, man.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we don't have.
Right.
If they verbally come in and told us that I give permission for my neighbor or my whatever.
Right.
Then you have to go.
Yeah. So so at Dunlap, they do kind of note when other people have permission to pick up other people's holds. Okay. No, yeah.
They will call
Yeah, and some libraries have had issues with noting which family members have permission to pick up each other's holds, and then family members promptly changing that permission. So it's one thing that Carrie said that I don't know if I managed to relate in the chat is it's like a lot of things we do. It is a balancing act between providing access and providing privacy, and how where do you put the line? Yeah.
Can I ask you on the notes,
Mhm.
how long do they stay on?
And
If it's been more than a year,
those
is
notes
it deleted?
those notes stay on until y'all
Okay.
clean them up, basically. So
Obviously, we wouldn't remove another library's note.
well, not that type. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, that we will be talking. As I mentioned, one of the upcoming policies to be discussed in the subcommittee is the patron notes policy. And one thing we do want to aim toward is libraries including whether a note can be removed by staff at any library, or whether a note needs to stay on a card, or kind of when can that note be removed. I mean, something like so-and-so has permission to pick up holds, you probably don't necessarily have an expiration date on something like that, but yeah, I think that solution kind of makes sense in a lot of ways, but that only the card holder can say who has, you can't walk in and say, I have permission to pick up holds for this card. That probably, but if it's a child, yeah, it's another reason to push the app, because it does put it does put the initiative on the patrons to say, if the accounts are linked, in order to link an account on the app, you have to have both the card number and PIN number. So,
I've been pushing to add that everything is listen, because it's like, I think that will clear up some of these
right.
problems, and I'm just like, yes,
Please.
Yes.
Well, any time like that you can kind of put a little bit of the responsibility on the patron, I think it can be sort of helpful. Just as if you want to say I do not care and turn on keep circ history and everything, then okay, but you have to turn it on. I'm not doing it for you. Yeah.
Picking that number of what's due now. How do you handle though if parents want their PIN on the kids' cards? That's their choice, right? Even though it's a privacy thing.
I mean, that's when parent. Yeah, we're discussing kind of parents getting access to children's pins or setting children's pins.
I asked the kid, what would you like to, well, I'll just say it, what would you guys like to pin to be set? And if the parent speaks up and says, I want to pin this, the kid's standing there, the kid said, no, I want to pin. I would have put the kid's pin, and the parent standing there to hear it.
Okay.
Most of the time, the parents put their
Right.
And that we have not had that happen yet to our knowledge, to where it is a big thing.
Okay.
That it does get, that's one of those things I'm expecting someday to come up where we're going to have to deal with what we have.
Right.
Okay. 15-year-old, what do they have checked out expecting to read their privacy? But when the card's created, mom's put her email on all the accounts.
Yeah, we're talking a bit more, for those of you online, we're talking a bit more about the privacy on juvenile cards. Kind of the practice when you're registering a user that, often you're registering with the child and parent there. So it's easy to make sure, that the child also knows what their PIN is, and then they can log into RSA and change it, I guess, if they don't wish their parent to have access to their account. But also, often when children are setting up PIN, they're using a parent's email, and then the parent is seeing billing notices or renewal notices that come to the email anyway. So, yeah.
Yes, kids aren't going to have privacy, but if like the adults are responsible for the items on the card, then
Yeah, like how do you issue a person like, I'm billing you $25, but I'm not telling you what it's for? It gets a little tricky. Yeah. So. Mhm.
What you do with your kids' mail is you know.
Okay.
And I always hit up when I tell people any of this, stay on paper.
You don't need child's mail, that's your house.
Okay. Yeah, one way around that is at Fond du Lac, they mail the bill notice to the child's name at that address, and then if the parent opens the child's mail, that is out of our hands, basically. So again, it is all very interesting topics. Any other discussion on that? No? Any other topics of general interest? Yeah. Yeah.
So all y'all, how do you guys handle when a patron is at their renewal limit and wants to renew the item again?
Okay.
What do you guys?
Is it your item?
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you handle it when a patron wants to is at their renewal limit and wants to renew the item again, and it is an item that you own? So is the question.
Sure. Like, so right now, like I feel out on renewal when they hit that 6 weeks or 2 weeks of DVD, they want to renew it again. I'm like, our procedure is you have to return it, and we usually tell people it has to be here for 24 hours. Like we basically say it has to be here till the next day. I literally had somebody ask me to show them that in my policy, and I'm like, I can't. I will tell you that it has to be checked in, and you can get it when you get back on the shelf, and I'll make sure that it doesn't go back on the shelf tomorrow. But like, I was curious if anybody had a more elegant answer than like if they're like it has to be 24, it has to be 48, it has to be, or you just like,
Yeah.
because I've had more and more people pushing it lately, like renewal limit at all. Other people are going to be kind of, you know.
Dunlop gets a lot of, I'm gonna check it in, but can we check it out on my kid's card right
Yeah,
now?
yeah. So of course you have the patrons trying to get around to check it out onto a different family member's card. Some libraries have you must return it and sit on the shelf for 24 hours, and then you can have it again if you wish.
Well, it depends if we just start before they put the hold on, because I'm like, well, it'll be picked up the next pick list, and it'll be available when we do the next pick list.
I guess I just feel like it's better to have it in someone's hands.
At that point, why even have it?
Yeah.
But they're all on some tone, then you never see some of those.
What I do is I will look to see how much, like, if they reach the renewal limit on something, like, and I'm more meaning about this with books than with stuff, because movies are in and out, in and out, in and out. But if somebody's got a book, if it's not new, and it's obviously an override and hold to renewal. But like if it is an item that is not new and nobody has holds on it, and like maybe this is just like one time over, it's not like they've had it for 3 months. Like I'll just override and let them renew it for another time, and then but then like what I do is like in looking at like how long they had it out, like they get like one like lenience, but after that I'd be like, okay, I really want to see it. Like you have it, have you lost it? Yeah.
I mean, I don't see my board changing the long renewal, so I'm gonna have to enforce something at that end of that 6 weeks.
Right.
Kind of funny, we have a picture that follows a long time.
Yeah, so it's just one.
Yeah, seeing it done like they do, but previously it was still that same.
Yeah, it's
Weeks. Yeah.
yeah. When we changed our DVDs to be like when we went from 3-day checkout on DVDs to week checkout, then like got the rules for a while. Yeah. But yeah, I've been running into it more. Like I've had some people think like the 24-hour thing is stupid. I'm like, well, I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but this is what the policy is.
Right.
Does everybody on new items, like our new movies, there's still 2 weeks? Do you have like 1 week on
We
new?
have items. We don't have 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Right. I mean, our DVDs are different than our books, but a DVD is a DVD, a book is a book. We don't. Yeah, we don't have any stuff.
Yeah.
This isn't our material, but we have a patron that bought a lot of nonfiction material, and she often renews it a couple times, and never wants to. And so a lot of ours comes from Quincy, it seems like, and we call Quincy, and they finally chose to call them. It's nonfiction, and there's no rules to do it anytime you want.
Yeah. So it sounds like some libraries kind of play it by ear based on what type of
We
what type of item it is. Is it going to be a high demand thing? And if it's not a high demand thing, then they're more likely to be lenient and allow an extra renewal versus if it's a high demand thing. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You didn't need to tell the patron that it was you. Yeah. Yeah, one library allows the extra renewal, but then as soon as it's checked out, places a copy level hold on it for the library to prevent further renewals after that one extra one. Yeah, I know I had conversations with patrons where it's kind of like, okay, you have now had this for 8 weeks. If you haven't read it in that time, I would sometimes say, maybe this is just not the right time. How about return it for a bit? And then when you're ready to come back for the item, try again. But we had the same, our policy at Peoria was similar to the return it, leave it on the shelf for 24 hours, just give someone else a chance to find it. And then, but if it were something, like especially if it were, for me, if it were a situation where it was like a child who was writing a report and they're like, the report's due Friday, I don't need it after Friday, but I need it till Friday, then I was much more likely to be, but yeah, so that's another where there's gonna be judgment calls, no matter what your internal policy even says. It's kind of like forgiving fines. If it is your item officially, I as RSA don't really care too much how you handle that if it is your item. As soon as it's another library's item, suddenly I care. But again, I like hearing how different people handle it though, because it does kind of, sometimes you hear one and you're like, oh, that's genius. That's what I'm gonna do. But anyway. Any other discussion on that? Any other topics, anyone? Okay, well, we didn't quite make it till 3, but we made it past 2:30. So I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you to everyone online for attending and for participating. I appreciate your time. Okay, and I'm going to one comment. Oh yeah, that's a good point. When you're doing this, you should use renewal so that it counts as a renewal as opposed to using modified due date, which kind of gets you out. To me, modified due date is kind of the thing that you should only use if you've messed something up, like, because it does kind of take it out of that renewal cycle. Right. Yeah. To me, modified due date is kind of a last resort, weird situation, something weird and extenuating. Yeah, like I need 1 extra day, or I've even modified due dates to be shorter, but that's because I'm petty. So I've told the patrons, don't worry. Okay, thank you all again. I appreciate the conversation. Have a great week.